Welcome to the Communication Club March meeting. And we are going to be talking about how to master the art of small talk. I am Michelle Ann Charles, the club president. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to share the audio instructions and video instructions. You don't have to be on video. If you'd like to use your audio to ask a question, these are the setup instructions. You can also raise your hand or ask a question in the chat. And we'll get started with our OAC announcement. So Leah, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Your experience here at Southern New Hampshire University is important to us. It is our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of this event that present barriers to accessibility, please notify the Online Accessibility Center, OAC, at snhu.edu or phone 866-305-9430 or Campus Accessibility Center, CAC, at snhu.edu or phone 603-644-3118 as soon as possible. Attendees may complete the OAC live captioning and live ASL interpreter request form and provide at least 1 week advance notice to coordinate event accommodations.
Thank you, Aaliyah.
No problem.
So if you do need some assistance, please go ahead and reach out to the OAC, and I'll be happy to assist you. So like I mentioned, tonight we're going to be talking about mastering the art of small talk. Let me just start by saying that I know that for some people, small talk is a really scary and dangerous proposition. But I'm going to encourage you to embrace small talk because it's one of the ways that you can make connections with people. And when you're networking or you're in a situation that you can just have very light, fun conversations with people you meet. If you're on a plane, you might want to talk to your seatmate. You never know who you're going to run into while you're out and about on your day. And making small talk is one of the ways that you can start to develop relationships with people, make good connections, and it's a great technique to learn. So I'm pretty sure that most people have seen a lot of these common conversational tips that are provided to folks to say, okay, here's what you can do to create, good conversations with people when you meet with them. And I'm not saying to never do these things, but I think that to become a great conversationalist, you have to kind of go beyond these common conversational tips. So tip number 1 and 2 are be interested in others and be a good listener. Of course, you absolutely do want to do this. Don't get me wrong. It is great and the right thing to do to be interested in others and listen to people. But doing so should not form the primary basis of your conversation. Being too interested in others and being a good listener to an unreasonable extent places the burden of the conversation on the other person. And you really never actually learn anything, learn about making conversation if you're only listening, if that's all you do in the conversation. So instead of just being interested, also be interesting. So instead of focusing on being a good listener, which you should do, but you want to focus on being someone with something to say, a point of view. Those two tips kind of go hand in hand. Now, I don't mean that you have to have like a lot of interests or a lot of things so you'll have something to talk about. What I mean by that, by being interesting and have something to say, is that you should be able to create interesting conversations with people. So tip number 3, ask lots of questions. So instead of asking lots of questions, I would suggest using questions infrequently and only in kind of specific situations. Well, why? Well, because if you ask someone a lot of questions, you are again putting the burden of making conversation on the other person. And that's not really cool. So, what are you supposed to do if you can't ask questions? It's not that you can't ask questions, you should focus on making statements or observations that create space for conversation. So, a very simplistic example of this is you meet someone and you say, "How are you?" Well, the answer is going to be fine most of the time, right? But if you meet someone and you say, "You're looking phenomenal," well, that opens up and changes the conversation. The person is going to respond and feel very happy, and a conversation can kick off. Just by making that small shift, you've now taken the burden of making conversation off the other person. They can simply respond to your observation, right? So if I say, "How are you?" they are, burdened with that response. What if they're not doing well? Right? So they're not going to be in a mood to share with you that, they've had a bad day or things like that. But you brought all those feelings up for them because now they have to just say fine, right? Because now you're in a professional, perhaps, environment, and that's maybe not appropriate. So if you turn "How are you?" into "You're looking phenomenal," they can respond to your observation without the burden of having to lie to you about their state of mind. But there are some times when you should ask questions, right? So you should use questions to bring up an initial topic, right? To transition or to change topics or to get further into a topic you're already on. So even then, you don't want to treat a conversation like it's a game of 20 questions. Try to stick to that kind of 80-20 ratio of non-questions to questions. And if you find yourself asking more questions, that's a clear sign you need to work on improving your conversational skills. So tip number 4, know and use interesting conversation topics and starters. So I think that a lot of us want to look for the right topic that we can bring up that's going to guarantee a great conversation. But it presupposes that, specific topics are the gateway to having a good conversation when it's actually not the case at all. And that's kind of like the wrong paradigm, the wrong mindset to approach a conversation. So really, I want you to consider that you shouldn't worry about the topic, but focus on having the right type of conversation, right? So you want to focus on having, changing from like just a stone cold, logical, vanilla conversation to something playful or fun, exciting, or dynamic. The next tip, number 5 and number 6. Number 5, talk about your passions and interests or tell stories. So you might find your passion and interests fascinating. You might find your stories amazing, and maybe they are. But trust me when I say, nobody else is going to find them as fascinating and as amazing as you do. It's not to say that you can't from time to time talk about your passions and interests and stories when the context calls for it, but instead of talking about your passions and interests are going on, long-winded monologues that become the entire conversation between you and somebody else or other people, flip the conversation to kind of a two-way conversation. You don't want to make yourself the center of the conversation. You want to make it a two-way conversation. And when I say two-way conversation, I think, let me advance a little bit. So the average conversation, you're making a statement and you're asking a question, you're serving the ball, the person's going back to you, serving it back to you, back and forth and back and forth. And it might be good, and there might be some zingers in there, and it might be fun. And if you're talking about yourself, you're basically serving the ball against the wall and just having fun on your own. So let me go back to the next one, which is be polite and inoffensive. The best way to kill a conversation vibe is to be, too polite, too vanilla. Make the conversation sometimes a little bit edgy, a little bit provocative. I don't mean nasty. I don't mean bringing up, divisive topics, but to have a little edge to it, to have when a conversation has no vibe or is uninteresting, add some flavor to the conversation. Give it a little push towards something that's potentially interesting. And number 7, have deep conversations. There is a time and a place to have deep conversations with other people, but it's not most of the time. So instead of aiming to have deep conversations with others, try to make conversations fun and playful and exciting. I think, about 95% of the conversations you should have should be fun, should be dynamic. Save the deep conversations for those rare occasions where you and the other people in the mood are in the mood for them, and there is an established relationship that will tolerate a deep conversation. So here is how to move your conversation from good to great. So a good conversationalist knows how to make a conversation fun and interesting. But a great conversationalist knows how to make conversation fun, interesting, and dynamic for everyone in the conversation. And they make something out of nothing. So here's an example. You're in a coffee shop. The barista spills coffee on their hands. Oh gosh, are you okay? Yeah, I'm all right. I'm used to it. Well, take care of that hand. Sorry that happened. No worries. Let me know if you need more cream or sugar. Okay, thanks. Have a good day. Now that's a decent conversation. It's a normal, interaction. But it's very basic, very, tennis style. I ask a question, the person says something else, I say something else, they say something else. There's nothing fun or exciting about this conversation at all. It's not memorable. But here is a more memorable version of this conversation. So this is a great example. So, ouch, you okay? Yeah, I'm all right, I'm used to it. I'm sure you're probably superhuman by now. I bet you could reach into a hot oven and pull out a hot cake pan with your bare hands. Hey, I've actually done that. What? You're totally wasting your talent here. You should be a firefighter. So look at the difference between the two conversations. Same conversation, same situation, but it's framed so differently. It's much more fun, a bit more exciting, allows the person to have a dynamic and memorable conversation. So Aaliyah, what do you think about this example?
Well, for one thing, I'm guilty of the good examples. And
Right, I think we all are. And this is fine. There's nothing wrong with this.
yeah.
But that's just a normal, everyday conversation. But what I'm talking about is being able to kind of take it up a little extra notch, right? To make it
Yeah.
memorable, to make it fun. So does anyone have a great example that they can share of a conversation and how they've made it fun or dynamic?
Sydney has a question.
Sydney. Go ahead, Sydney. I think you can open your mic if you'd like to talk. And again, like I mentioned, this is more of a two-way conversation. It allows the other person to bring something else into it.
No, Sydney, we can't hear you.
Oh, I did not hear you. A great conversationalist deliberately creates conditions which allows everyone in the conversation to show up and collectively bring the conversation to like a different, better level. So that second example was a different, better level. It didn't have to get personal. It was fun. And it was dynamic. Sydney, I see you're muted. Let me see if I can unmute you. Or maybe you can just type in the chat if you still have a question. So, like I said earlier, a great conversationalist makes something out of nothing, right? You're talking about nothing really, but it was fun and playful and interesting. So that's why the topic doesn't matter. It's the type of conversation that that you have that matters. It's not asking a ton of questions. It wasn't talking about yourself. It wasn't a long-winded, winded story. It wasn't like a singles tennis match, and it wasn't like a plain vanilla. That conversation, the great conversation. Let me go back. That invited the barista to play a brief game with you and involve them and push the conversation outside of mediocre. Sydney asks, my question is, how do we not come off as sarcastic? Well, I think that sarcasm, judicious sarcasm can be fun. And you have to be able to read the room, if that makes sense. So if it doesn't seem like someone is receptive, then change tacks. And then, okay, thanks, have a good day. Well, like I said, this is a good example, but this is a great example. So it's really just about the type of conversation. And you can do this at any time, with anywhere, with anyone. Absolutely. So as I mentioned, you want to change the conversational paradigm from a topic to having more fun, interesting conversations really about nothing. So if you're attending an event, you can talk about the event. You can talk about the venue. You can talk about the speaker. You can even talk about the weather. If it's something like, if the wind is tornado gale strength winds, right? So stop looking for a specific topic, the magic bullet that you can talk about. It's really about creating that environment that you can have a fun, dynamic conversation with. And look for some shared experiences. So if you're attending an event, a networking event, that's what it's for. You can talk about the awkwardness you feel at these types of events. I think most people feel that same awkwardness and can relate to that. And keep it light and approachable. And also be genuinely interested. I think we've all been in a conversation where we didn't feel the person was listening to what we had to say, right? We've also probably all have had conversations with people or met someone and they made you feel like you were the most important person at that moment, right? So that's what you want to be. You want to be, make sure that you are paying attention, that you are not peppering someone with questions, that you're paying attention and treating the person like they are, in that moment, the most important person to you, because right then they are. And people will always remember not necessarily what you said, but how you made them feel about themselves. But I know that there are lots of times when you might get stuck. So if you're not sure what to do, here are 5 ways that you can keep a question, keep a conversation going. So here's how you can kind of extend or deepen the conversation. So if someone's telling you, you know, describing something, you know, for example, just ask for an example of what they mean. And that will keep them within the conversation, talking about something that's important to them. Ask what it was like. So someone says, "Oh, you know, I went, you know, walking on the beach in the Virgin Islands. Oh, wow, what was that like?" Number 3, they say, you know, "I've decided, I'm going to find another job, or I'm going to school," or how did you come to make that decision? What made you make that decision? How did you decide that? And if someone says, you know, that was really interesting. In what way? In what way was that interesting? And if they say some word, um, if they say that they're a little worried about something, what do you mean by that? So these are 5 questions that you can ask. Ask for an example, and just say exactly that. You know, for example, what was that like? How did you finalize that decision? What went into making that decision? In what way? In what way do you mean that? And what do you mean by interesting? Or what do you mean by crazy? It deepens the conversation just a bit and allows the person to expand upon what they mean. And it shows that you're really interested. What do you think about these questions? Have you ever used conversation extenders like this? I see a couple people typing.
Oh, wow.
Okay. After you ask someone a question, how do you handle a situation where the person won't stop talking or begin rambling, gaining more control over the conversation to make it more two-way? That is a very good question, Madeline. It really depends on the situation and who you're talking to. So if you're in a professional situation, knowing how to extricate yourself is just as important as knowing how to get into a conversation. So maybe what you can do is, as the person's talking, you can make a twist one of these questions to kind of change their direction a bit. You know what I mean? So, hey, you a couple minutes ago you mentioned this. Isn't that, ask a different question. Or if you're in a group of people, bring someone else into the conversation. As they say something, oh, you know what? I think John had that experience, didn't you, John? You know what I mean? To try to shift the attention a bit away, but also keep the conversation going. And then if you really need to extricate yourself, you can say, oh, you know what? I'll be right back. There's someone over here I really needed to grab before the night was over. Brandon, I think these are great questions to keep the conversation going. There have been times where I didn't know what to say, but we'll use these moving forward. Oh, that's great, Brandon. Yeah, they're very simple questions designed to keep the conversation going and kind of deepen the conversation just a little bit to show that you're interested and, that you're paying attention. Sydney, yes, I am. Yes, you are what? I don't know what that means. Yes, definitely the second one. Oh, yeah. Mainly 2 and 3. Oh, okay, so those are what you've used or what you've heard before? So, Madeline, did I answer your question? Do you feel like those are some good suggestions for you that you'll be able to use? Oh, Simone, okay. The second one? Yeah, what was that like? That's a great question because people like to talk about their experiences. So you can use these questions so you're not kind of stuck, right? So that the conversation kind of flows smoothly and everyone can kind of connect the dots and have a fantastic time. So again, if you leave with nothing else for today, remember these questions and remember these tips so that you can have great two-way conversations, engage in kind of dynamic conversations, fun and playful and interesting. And just remember the good to great example. There's nothing wrong with good, but there are times where you want to take it up a notch. So if you're standing in the security line at the airport, you and the people around you are in the same situation. I've struck up conversations with folks, standing in security or waiting to board a plane or a train or things like that. So there's nothing to be afraid of. And it is an incredibly important skill, especially in business. If you're at networking events, if you're in meetings with people you don't know. Again, remember, you can make fun, interesting conversations out of nothing at all. You can talk about the food at the event. We've just been going through quarantine. I struck up a conversation with someone because I had an interview, and I wore a dress that I haven't worn in the 2 years since I've been home working from home in quarantine, and it was a little snug. So that was a shared conversation that I had with a colleague to say, hey, we're going back to the office. Now I have to find clothes that fit. I have to get back to the gym. So you can easily make conversations out of absolutely nothing. you can easily keep a conversation going using these 5 questions if you're stuck. So hopefully that was helpful. And I'm happy to answer any further questions. And like I said, the mics are open.
I'm definitely going to use these tips, especially in like study groups that I like to be in, because I found that not having a conversation beforehand can get in the way of like an agenda or work we're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and then everybody's just like trying to run away, just trying to leave the group or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think sometimes people are just waiting for that one person to speak up. Because I've noticed that I've been in meetings where, the meeting is over and people are chit chatting. And if you're with someone who is maybe a higher level, maybe someone, no one wants to be the first to leave.
That's so
So
true.
it's good to have great, exit statements. Thank you so much for this meeting, this topic, this conversation. Um, I'll see you next time, and then just grab your stuff and go.
Yeah, I find that I'm actually, when I join webinars too, that
Mm-hmm.
I tend to like linger to see who's the first to leave.
Right, right. Yeah, there's no need to linger unless you actually have something to say. Thank you so much. That was very interesting. I'll see you next time.
Yeah, it'll definitely reduce the awkwardness.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing to be awkward about. If the meeting was an hour long and you're coming up on an hour and the meeting is over, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I have another commitment. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Yeah, I can relate, Sydney.
Well, I'll tell you what. I was in a meeting earlier today. Today's International Women's Day, and I moderated a discussion with several leaders within my organization. And one of them said that, it's not that she does not have fear. She's an executive vice president. It's not that she does not have fear, but she makes sure to tell herself all the time, be brave. There is no one else that is more important or less important than she is. We're all equal, no matter what our level is in our organization. And we each have value. So it's really a matter of practicing, right? Being more
Yeah.
comfortable with being able to speak up, to say, all right, thank you. Have a great day. I'll see you next time. And I assure you that there are other people on the call or in the meeting just waiting for someone to take their lead, because the minute that one person does, everyone else follows suit.